Hello, this is BBC World News. I'm Ben Bland. These are our top stories. Afghan's president declares a ceasefire with the Taliban. He says it'll last 3 months if both sides respect it.
We call upon the leadership of the Taliban to welcome the wishes of Afghans for a long-lasting and real peace.
Rescue teams step up their efforts to try and reach thousands of stranded families in the Indian province of Kerala. A study finds more than a third of fruit and vegetables in Europe are thrown away before reaching the shelves. That is 50 million tonnes every year. And in sport, Manchester City score 6 goals to continue their winning start in the Premier League. Hello and a very warm welcome to BBC World News. The Afghan president has announced a conditional ceasefire with Taliban insurgents from Monday ahead of the Muslim festival of Eid al-Adha. Ashraf Ghani made the announcement at a ceremony to mark Afghan Independence Day in Kabul. He said the ceasefire would continue for 3 months as long as the Taliban respected it. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg has welcomed Mr. Ghani's offer and urged the Taliban to accept it. The announcement by the president comes days after intense fighting in the city of Ghazni.
In order for our countrymen to spend the days of Eid al-Adha in a peaceful manner, once again we announce a ceasefire that will start tomorrow, Monday, until the anniversary of Prophet Muhammad's birth, provided that the Taliban preserves and respects it and announces it for any period they agree upon. We call upon the leadership of the Taliban to welcome the wishes of Afghans for a long-lasting and real peace, and we urge them to get ready for peace talks based on Islamic values and principles.
Well, live now to Kabul and our correspondent there, Shoaib Sharifi. Shoaib, this ceasefire announcement by the president comes as something of a surprise, perhaps, given the intensity of fighting that we've seen in and around Ghazni in recent days.
Yes, indeed. It's a conditional and yet at the same time very after a week of intense fighting in the last 10 days when the Taliban penetrated an important city of Ghazni in south of Kabul and managed to hold and fight for 5 days against security forces, as a result of which at least 100 Afghan security forces were killed. That was followed by 2 deadly attacks in north of the country, in which at least another 100 Afghan security forces were killed. And even as we speak today, a district in north of the country fell into the hands of the Taliban. So this, although the fighting, and right up to the moments of Afghan president announcing this conditional ceasefire, there have been fighting across the country over at least 24 of front lines. But it is expected that the conditional ceasefire, at least for 3 days of Eid, may be positively responded by the Taliban as well. The group, however, has been fighting in the last 2 months against Afghan security forces immediately after mid-June's unilateral ceasefire by Afghan government, which was overlapped by 3 days of Taliban ceasefire. That for the first time in 17 years in Afghanistan, the group halted fighting against Afghan security forces, and people in major cities saw Taliban fighters come on the streets of the cities, talk to people and even hugging security forces. But that friendly atmosphere immediately was stopped with bloody fighting on day 4 of previous Eid in mid-June, continued throughout the last 2 months. And it's now hoped that at least for 3 days of Eid, the country as a whole may have a relatively calm and peaceful days.
OK, Shoaib Sharifi there for us in Kabul. Thank you very much. The Indonesian island of Lombok has been hit by 2 more earthquakes in a single day. The latest had a magnitude of 7.2 and struck in the sea 120 kilometres north of the island. Sunday's earlier tremor measured 6.3. The new quakes have happened just 2 weeks after an earthquake killed more than 470 people and destroyed tens of thousands of homes. The National Disaster Agency says it's still assessing the latest situation. There have been no reports of deaths or serious damage, but a number of landslides have happened. Rescue teams are urgently trying to reach people cut off by floods in Kerala state in southern India. Thousands of people have been trapped on roofs or in their homes for days. Meanwhile, the Pope has delivered a prayer for those affected by the disaster, calling for solidarity and, quote, the concrete support of the international community for the people of Kerala. Well, at least 350 people have died. The BBC's Jane Francis Kelly reports.
Vehicles risk the flooded roads in submerged villages. In some areas, the waters are beginning to recede, allowing people to retrieve some of their possessions. India's Met Department has forecast a let-up in the heavy rain over the next 5 days, apart from a few areas in the small coastal state. Kerala often sees some of the highest rainfalls during the monsoon season, but this year it has been exceptional. Flash floods and landslides have killed hundreds and left others destitute. Hundreds of thousands have had to flee to relief camps for food and shelter. These people are living in a government veterinary hospital.
There are
10 to 15 children and about 35 of us adults, including really old people. We've been here for the past 6 days.
Others are being fed in a school, unable to return home because they say water is still coming into their houses. All the state's 44 rivers have flooded, swelled by the release of water from dams which have become full. Here, local fishermen have come to the rescue. Hundreds of government boats are also out and about searching for people.
There are many people who are still trapped in their houses in many places. I hope they get their help very soon. We couldn't stay there anymore, and I am thankful for the people who brought us out of there.
Where it's not possible to rescue people, troops have stepped up relief efforts, dropping food and other supplies to remote or cut-off areas. India's Prime Minister Modi visited the state on Saturday and promised millions of pounds in aid. People in neighbouring states are also sending food, medical supplies and clean water. The problem now is getting it to those affected and also stopping the spread of disease due to the unsanitary conditions. Jane Francis Kelly, BBC News.
Well, with me in the studio is Prakash Panikar from the KCWA Trust. That's a Kerala community trust based here in London. His wife and brothers live in Kerala and their homes have been destroyed by the floods. Prakash, it must be an absolutely devastating time for your family. What do you know about the impact it's had on them?
The impact is very horrifying. The torrential rain and the flood has caused a lot of devastation, and it is probably one of the worst disasters that has happened in the living memory of the people living in Kerala. The memories will linger on with the stories of people who have lost their lives, bereaved families, economy is completely devastated, building is collapsed, and it is a very, very horrifying experience and will be a very, very horrifying memory.
I was just mentioning about the fact that your family's homes have been devastated, have been badly damaged, destroyed by this. Where are they now? Are they being looked after?
The prime house where I was born and my brother, the house where my brother is living, that is completely submerged underwater. Horrifying experience. Snakes, rats, dogs, poisonous snakes, and all horrifying creatures are inhabited in that area. So it's a very horrifying experience. My brother is definitely has been rescued. That is not a problem. But there are my relatives, my friends who are in the relief camp. And the condition and the plight of the relief camp is very, very dismal and very, very disappointing. The people are living with the clothes that is full of mud. It is very smelly, obnoxious smells. And some people will be leaning their head towards the wall, trying to sleep, and they weep, cry, thinking of the lost families, because they know when the water recedes, they may not probably see them. So it is very, very sad experience.
And how does this contrast with the normal extent of the monsoon season?
This is a totally a different type of monsoons which nobody has really anticipated. If government, people or anybody has anticipated this dimension of problem, we would have taken enough precautions. So it was like tsunami. It is a very unexpected experience which we never thought will happen in Kerala. It has never happened in Kerala and we never thought it will happen in Kerala.
Okay, Prakash, really appreciate you coming in to speak to us, Prakash Panika, and I wish your family out there all the very best.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's round up some of the day's other main news for you now. And the search operation for those missing after a motorway bridge collapsed in Genoa in northwest Italy has ended. The official number of people killed is 43. A 200-metre section of the Morandi Bridge gave way in busy traffic on Tuesday, plunging vehicles and chunks of concrete to the ground 45 metres below. Israel has closed the Erez border crossing point, which people use to cross to and from the Gaza Strip. Exemptions on urgent humanitarian grounds will be allowed. It comes after continuing protests by Palestinians on the border became violent. 2 Palestinians were shot dead by Israeli forces on Friday, the latest among about 170 killed since the current wave of protests began in late March. An Egyptian man who hijacked a plane has been deported to Egypt after a 2-year extradition battle. Saif al-Din Mustafa is alleged to have used a fake suicide belt to hijack an Egypt Air plane in March 2016. He diverted the plane to Cyprus, where he was arrested. He had argued that he would not face a fair trial in Egypt. More than a third of farmed fruit and vegetables never reach supermarket shelves because they are misshapen or the wrong size. That is according to new research by the University of Edinburgh. The study found more than 50 million tonnes of fruit and vegetables grown across Europe were thrown out each year, in part because they didn't meet customers' expectations of how they should look. Well, let's speak to Stephen Porter, who's one of the authors of the report. Stephen, I thought there were campaigns in recent years to try and get away from this obsession with what the fruit and veg looks like and just get people, I mean, there was a big movement, wasn't there, to get people to embrace ugly fruit?
There certainly has been, and I would say that it has been quite successful. The supermarkets, they themselves have, they understand that there is this issue, and they have begun to increase the ugly food or the non-perfect food that they put on offer for sale. So there has certainly been some improvements with the idea of it doesn't necessarily need to look absolutely perfect for it to be something that we would want to purchase.
And so who does the responsibility for all of this waste lie with? If the fruit and veg isn't actually getting to the supermarket shelves, is it the producers who aren't sending it to the supermarkets? Is it the supermarkets saying, no, this isn't good enough, and then chucking it out once it gets them? Who bears responsibility?
What we've argued is no one party within this supply chain is at fault more than the other. There are a number of different parties involved. There's the consumer, there's the producer, there are the supermarket multiples, and everyone else in between as well. Each of those entities, they will have their own expectations, and some of them have a little bit more power than others to be able to influence what the expectations are a little bit further down the chain. But each of us are, I would say, equally to blame, or the cause of why the food that is, why this level of food that's produced doesn't actually leave the farm.
Is there another possible route for these fruit and vegetables to go? I mean, I know I've certainly been and visited farms and spoken to farmers who say, actually, discarded fruit and veg, they've got facilities where they can turn it into biofuel, they can recompost it, and actually it's very valuable to them. So rather than throwing this stuff away, could it perhaps be put to another use, do you think?
Absolutely. Anaerobic digestion, putting it into to make biofuels from it, that is one potential route for that ugly food to go down. It could be otherwise redistributed perhaps, but it does depend on whether the infrastructure is in place to allow those different routes to be taken, the different for those channels to really exist. So theoretically, yes, and in certain instances, that level of food is moving from the traditional retail sales channel into something else, and it will have value. But it also depends on whether that structure is in place and if it makes economic sense for the producers, for the farmers, to engage in those particular channels.
OK, Stephen, thanks very much indeed for talking us through that. Stephen Porter there. And thank you for being with us. Stay with us if you can here on BBC World News, still to come. The Baptist Church in Detroit, where she sang gospel growing up, holds Sunday service in honour of Aretha Franklin.
Washington, the world's most political city, is today assessing the political health of the world's most powerful man.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Ms. Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong.
In South Africa, 97 people have been killed today in one of the worst days of violence between rival black groups. Over the last 10 days, 500 have died.
Czechoslovakia must be free! Czechoslovakia must be free! Czechoslovakia must be free!
Russia is observing a national day of mourning for the 118 submariners who died on board the Kursk.
We all with them now, in our hearts.
The Pope has celebrated Mass before a congregation of more than 2.5 million people in his hometown of Krakow.
Stay with us, chanted this ocean of humanity. Well, joked the Pope, so you want me to desert Rome?
Hello, this is BBC World News. I'm Ben with the latest headlines. Afghan's president declares a ceasefire to mark the holiday of Eid. He says it will last 3 months, but only if the Taliban respects it too. Rescue teams in Kerala have stepped up their efforts to reach thousands of families stranded by flooding. 500,000 people are homeless. The New York Times has reported that the White House's top lawyer, Donald McGahn, cooperated extensively with an investigation into Russian election interference. President Trump tweeted earlier disparaging the report as fake and says he allowed Mr. McGahn and others to testify, as he said he has nothing to hide. The newspaper says Mr. McGahn was interviewed at least 3 times as part of the inquiry led by US Special Counsel Robert Mueller, and his testimony went much further than the president had expected. Well, let's get more from Chris Buckler, who's following developments for us from Washington. Chris, do we know exactly what Mr. McGahn told the investigation?
Yeah, we had this angry tweet from Donald Trump, which seemed to suggest that this was a fake piece in the New York Times. But the reality is what it did is it really gave legitimacy to their core element of their story, which was essentially that Don McGahn has given extensive testimony now to Robert Mueller's team, who are investigating this allegations of interference in the election from Russia back in 2016, and allegations, of course, that there was collusion in it. Now, in terms of your question, obviously, Mr. McGahn was not involved in that campaign. He is a White House lawyer. He is not the personal attorney of Donald Trump. So what we understand he's been talking about are events that have followed that. Perhaps events that might suggest these allegations that potentially the president may have been involved at some stage in the obstruction of justice. So, for example, they will be having conversations about Don McGahn, about the circumstances surrounding the firing of the FBI director, James Comey. They'll also be looking at potentially some pressure that might have been put on Department of Justice officials, perhaps even the Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General. So those are the kind of things that Don McGahn has been questioned about. And according to the New York Times, this has been pretty extensive testimony, lasting somewhere in the region of 30 hours, apparently 3 separate interviews over a 9-month period. OK. And I just wonder, we heard from Mr. McGahn's own lawyer, didn't we, on this? What did he have to say? Yeah, Don McGann's lawyer basically says that he is cooperating with the inquiry. And, you know, the element of all of this is that essentially because Don McGann is a White House official, he is someone who represents the White House, that basically this is what he's going to go forward. There's been no secret of this, that he was going to have conversations with Robert Mueller. Now, obviously, in the president's tweet, what he's saying is that he gave permission for that to happen. Essentially what his argument is that the New York Times was trying to suggest that in some ways Don McGahn was being a rat, that in some ways he had turned on the president, and he's saying that is not the case at all, that he allowed this to go ahead. I suppose the real question is just how far he's gone in the testimony and whether it's been damaging or supportive to the president. The suggestions that are coming from this wider report in the New York Times suggest that there's been some evidence which has been, I suppose, slightly hurtful to the president, but others which has backed him up as well. Ultimately, of course, it's down to the special counsel to assess exactly what has been said here, and we're still waiting for that final report to come from him. And there is growing frustration, certainly on Donald Trump's side. We've heard from his personal attorney, his genuine personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, in the last couple of days, making very angry comments saying they expect this to be wrapped up soon, they want to report soon, and even suggesting that they might even have a report of their own.
OK, we shall watch and see with interest. Chris, thank you very much indeed. Chris Buckler there for us in Washington. Right, let's get to all the sport now, and for that we can join John Akers.
Thank you, Ben. We'll start with football, where Manchester United have lost for the second successive season at Brighton in the English Premier League. They were beaten 3-2, with Murray, Duffy and Gross getting the Brighton goals, all in the first half. Romelu Lukaku and Paul Pogba with a late penalty for United. Silva and an own goal to maintain the champions' 100% start to the season.
I never saw Sergio like right now. So he came back from in my period here, of course, in the past, always wasn't high level, but in that commitment with ball, without the ball, and he's happy and of course he scored 3 goals, but not just score 3 goals. He creates chances and passes and movements and everything.
Sunday is finals day at the Cincinnati Masters tennis, and in the women's draw, Simona Halep will play Kiki Bertens, with both aiming to win the event for the first time. And there are 2 familiar names in the men's final. Claire Thornton reports on their semi-final victories.
There's only one Masters 1000 trophy missing from Novak Djokovic's collection, and now, thanks to victory over Marin Cilic in Cincinnati, he has the chance to become the first player to win all 9 Masters titles. Taking the first set handed the Serb the advantage, but that was just the beginning, as this match stretched out for 2.5 hours. Cilic, who won here 2 years ago, controlled the second set, and at 5-3 the Croat held to love to send the match into a decider. The crucial moment arrived in the 8th game when Djokovic broke his opponent to lead 5-3. Before serving for the match and setting up a meeting with Roger Federer, who enjoyed a less taxing route to the final after his opponent, David Goffin, retired with a shoulder injury.
Well, every match is getting more difficult, obviously, and then as I progress in the tournament, I'm aware that I have to raise my game. I mean, I did win the first set today, but I wasn't really content how I played. I was happy how I played in the third, so that's what I'll take.
Simona Halep is on a roll after winning in Montreal last week, and she's hoping it will be a case of third time lucky for her in Cincinnati, where she has previously lost twice in the final. She broke early against Arina Sabalenka, who beat 3 top 20 players en route to the last 4, before breaking her opponent's serve twice more to seal the opening set. The top seed had to deny 3 break points in the second set as Sabalenka levelled at 4-4, but Halep progressed through to the final on her second match point. She'll now play Kiki Bertens, who defeated 2-time Wimbledon champion Petra Kvitova to reach the final. Claire Thornton, BBC News.
Cricket, and India are well on top against England in the 3rd test in Nottingham. After being bowled out this morning for 329, India then tore through England's batting lineup. They were all out for 161, Hardik Pandya taking 5 wickets. India are batting again. They've only lost 1 wicket in their second innings as they build a huge lead, and a win would be their first of the series. It would make it 2-1 with 2 to play. Meanwhile, former Australia fast bowler Mitchell Johnson has announced his retirement from all forms of cricket. The left-armer took 313 Test wickets through a roller-coaster career. He'd already stepped down from the international game back in 2015, but remained a useful bowler in 2020 competitions. That's it for now. Ben will have more for you later in Sport Today.
OK, John, we look forward to it. Thanks very much. Let me just show you some pictures now before we finish from New Bethel Baptist Church in Detroit. A mass was held there in honour of the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin. She died on Thursday at the age of 76 after a battle with pancreatic cancer. Fans were also paying their respects by leaving mementos outside her father's New Bethel Baptist Church, where Franklin sang gospel as a child. Aretha Franklin was an 18-time Grammy winner. She influenced generations of singers with unforgettable hits including Respect, Natural Woman and I Say a Little Prayer. Don't forget you can reach me and most of the team on social media. I'm on @BenMPland. See you soon.